There are a lot of similarities, I think, between Chicago and Toronto. Both are big cities and growing cities. You have a population of around 2.5 million. Chicago's 2.8 million. They're both global cities, cosmopolitan, international, both incredibly diverse, as I said before, large immigrant populations, both situated on the banks of the Great Lake. Both have baseball teams that have won back-to-back World Series. Chicago's team won around the same time my grandparents owned but they won nonetheless. And notwithstanding the quality of our baseball team, or yours for that matter, in many respects, these are cities that are thriving financially. And they seem to have what they need to remain the economic and the intellectual and the cultural powerhouses that they are well into the future. But we also see some really troubling trends. And it looks very similar in Chicago, I think, as it does here. Both cities have a great and a growing gap between the rich and the poor. I think it's starker in Chicago than here, but the trends here certainly aren't encouraging. In both cities, the demand for affordable housing is large and it's growing. Housing prices have skyrocketed recently. In Chicago now, nearly half of all households pay more than a third of their income for housing, which is what the federal government and most folks say ought to be the upper limit. 1 in every 4 households pays more than half their income for housing. And as we know, those are folks who are making terrible trade-offs. Do I pay the rent or do I buy groceries? Do I pay the rent or do I pay for health care? And they're certainly not left with enough money at the end of the day to do things like save for education, maybe less of an issue here with so many wonderful public institutions. Don't have an opportunity to save for retirement. These are big problems. And I think that we're facing these problems for similar reasons. In both cities, housing costs are growing much, much faster than wages. In both cities, I think we've lost a lot of good jobs, especially good jobs that didn't require a high degree of education. And a lot of the new jobs that are being created are lower wage. We also have more people taking temporary jobs and part-time jobs. And we're seeing population growth, as we said, that's driving demand up. And with home prices so high in both cities, I think we have more and more renters who historically would have purchased homes, who aren't able to purchase homes. And that means that the demand for that supply of rental housing is going up. And at the same time, the supply in both our cities is shrinking as a result of things like demolition to make way for higher-end development, condominium conversion. In Chicago, between 2000 and 2005, we lost 68,000 units of rental housing. 68,000.